So the internet is in a tizzy because apparently Gina Carano has this year spoken to Favreau and Filoni about, Star Wars, because they're talking about how in an interview recently she said she was on a Zoom call and refers to Dave Filoni as being in charge now at Star Wars, which means it had to be this year since he got put in charge in January. So people are very excited. A lot of people are very excited, myself included. Then we have these people like this one guy we're going to look at, which please do not harass anyone who are making comments, blah, blah, blah. Even though they're complete asshole, please don't harass them on Twitter. But I am going to show you how immediately the same old narrative pops back up with these people. But I think a lot of people would be very happy to see Gina Carano return to Star Wars. If they would bring her back as Cara Dune, which they haven't said they would, but if they did, it would be a smart move. And honestly, they should have done that in The Mandalorian and Grogu, and they should have put it in the advertising. And if they did that, they might not, be looking so bad in the pre-ticket sales and the early estimates for the film. It might have given them a boost they needed, because a lot of people were very turned off in the way that Gina Carano was treated by Disney and especially Lucasfilm. And Disney, of course, settled it with her because it was going to go to Discovery. And in my opinion, Discovery would have been very bad, because I think people at Lucasfilm were the ones, feeding this narrative, doing what they could, because they were mad that she wouldn't put pronouns in her bio. And make no mistake, that's what started this whole thing. That everything she said, they were there with a fine-tooth comb, trying to find something to get her on. And that's what led to this entire situation. So before we get into it any further, please like and subscribe. If you do, I'll give you a woohoo. Woohoo. And we're not going to have Kneon today because he's going to be back for videos later, but he's out this morning, so it was just me. And I'm in a mood, so I'm going to warn you now about where this is going to go. But again, before we start, I do want to say, do not harass anybody who we're showing quotes from, on X. I don't want to condone that at all, even though I called their ass out. So apparently on an April 15th interview, she said that, she was talking to Jon Favreau and he was joking. So where do we leave off? And they talked like, they were friends, like nothing had ever changed. Good. I'm glad to hear it. I think a lot of people would love to see her back. To which the Holocron posted about it as news, because it's a really exciting thing. And we get immediate responses. Actually, I'm probably not going to bring the person up. You can go out to the thing and see who that is. We'll just call him Jay and leave it at that. But immediately here comes Jay with all these ridiculous, the comments, the typical narrative that everybody's rewriting history, that she said this and she did that and all this stuff. Of course, it's the same arguments. She didn't put, she was being transphobic and didn't put pronouns in her bio, and she was, being mean to the trans community. She was an election denier. She was against masks. She was, talking about Republicans were like Holocaust victims. Of course, all these things are provably untrue, which I'm going to show you here in a minute, how it's all provably untrue. But immediately you get the bots in there acting like dumbasses, trying to start the same old narrative, which has been repeatedly proven to be lies. They're already trying to start it up again, because instead of doing the actual research and looking at what was actually said and using, critical thinking skills and half a brain, you could understand that's not what she said. But they are so effing stupid and pickled that, of course, everything they says is the truth. I also want to point out that this J person who is really, really mad about, the transphobic behavior does not have pronouns in their bio. So clearly they are obviously a transphobic piece of shit because they don't have pronouns in their bio. No, of course not. That's ridiculous. But that's the argument that was given towards Gina Carano when she wouldn't put pronouns in her bio. Meanwhile, a bunch of other actors at Lucasfilm and a bunch of employees at Lucasfilm at the time did not have pronouns in their bio, but no one bothered to harass them. And the whole reason that she hit harassment at all was because a lot of people saw Cara Dune, and because she was, she's a strong woman, strong female character, but physically strong, that obviously she was a trans character. Because they decided. And so, but since they decided that that was their representation, it was the obligation of Gina Carano to, keep, going along with their delusion that that was a trans character and to reinforce their beliefs because she had to or suffer the consequences. The actual truth of the matter was, here's what she legitimately said. Yes, Pedro and I spoke, and he helped me understand why people were putting them in their bios. I didn't know before, but I do now. I won't be putting them in my bio, but good for you all who chose to. I stand against bullying, especially the most vulnerable, and freedom to choose 100%. Now, this screenshot was taken after the fact. This is when she added the boop bop beep, but that wasn't added until a long time later. And the reason she added that was because of the harassment she got. Now, she said, I don't want to put him in mind, but I stand against bullying, and good for you if you choose to do so. Basically, I will defend your right to do it. If you want to put pronouns in your bio, then you have that right, by all means. And if anybody bullies you, I'm going to be like, hell no. She was very gracious, very, polite, never said anything against anyone. Okay. And as a result, these are the comments, targeted harassment for months. See, these are some of the comments. Fuck off, you stupid piece of shit. Nah, you're just transphobic trash, you dumb piece of shit. Fuck you, transphobic piece of shit. I read that. Gina Carano isn't even a good actor. She's a transphobe too. Again, it's all this shut up, you transphobic piece of shit in lockstep. And when you're racist too, because you don't, want to put pronouns in your bio. Months of harassment to which Star Wars did nothing. The Star Wars account did nothing. But when Christina Ariel got some pushback for racist comments, she said, Star Wars account went and stood with her. We're against racism. But you let other actresses get harassed by the mob because, my opinion, people at Lucasfilm were deliberately encouraging it and might have even been partly behind it, which is, I think, why Disney wanted to settle it. Of course, that's all my opinion. I am not saying it's factually true because I can't prove it, but based on what I've seen, I would likely suspect that to be the case. Months of crap, and that's when she put the beep, beep bop or beep boop bop beep in her bio. And she said it wasn't because of that. I say, it might have been because I would have done the same thing. They're all acting like in lockstep, like they're fucking bots. But she says that's not why, so we'll go by what she said. But they were acting like bots, and by the way, they were repeating the same things. Okay, so probably already she was very polite about the no pronouns in bio. She never, criticized anybody for using it. Instead, stood up for them for using it, and then she was harassed incessantly. All right, so that was the first argument they try to make. The next argument they keep trying to make is about the mask denier. Here's the thing. The pandemic has proven that there was a lot of problems. Like it's coming under all kinds of fire now. We know that social media outlets were told to block news that wasn't what they wanted to hear, to block scientists and stuff from saying things, to, punish people who are spreading misinformation, quote unquote, which turned out to be real information, by the way. Vaccines turned out to be nowhere near as effective as what they said. And now people are, they're finding all kinds of documented proof that they might have caused all kinds of physical ailments, including blood clots, heart issues, cancers, female problems, male problems, etc., etc. Okay, so they're finding documented proof. They rolled this out. You were not allowed to not take the shot. If you worked someplace, you were told you had to take it if you wanted to keep your job. They forced it on people. You weren't allowed to eat at restaurants if you didn't have proof that you were vaccinated. You weren't allowed to go to events if you didn't have proof you're vaccinated. And then the same people that pushed that narrative, right? When it came out that, maybe they weren't in the right, maybe they weren't on the right side of history, all are like, well, it was a stressful time. We should forgive and forget, because they want to be forgiven, but while they never forgive anybody else. All right. That being said, I saw a lot of people that were Democrats who did not take the shots. I saw people that were Republicans that did. It was never a partisan issue like they try to spin it now. Okay. It was people just did it if they felt like they should, except for those who were literally threatened with loss of their job. They were removed from positions. They were outed, from the military, all kinds of stuff, because they refused to take the shot. Even one guy I know, Disney, was fired for religious discrimination because he said he didn't feel religious reasons he could take it, and they fired him. So, if we're going to be honest about what history happened, there you go. And masks, masks probably didn't prevent it as far as the spread of the particles, because they're awfully small. However, I will say on the defense of masks, I do think it stops the spread of some illnesses because people aren't touching their mouths. Your mask is in front of your mouth. You're not like wiping your fingers in your mouth and stuff like that and spreading the germs into your body. So masks, I think, they did see a decline in the flu because people weren't around each other and because they weren't touching their mouths because they had masks on. But questioning this was not. It was considered a crime then. And in retrospect, we know that those who questioned it were probably in the right. The election denying accusation this Jay made. I want to point out that meanwhile, when the 2024 election happened, there was a whole stop the steal push, if you remember, and it was a bunch of Democrats who decided that they were going to be election deniers and they wanted it investigated to stop the steal. Now, these are the people who are mad when anybody questioned the election in 2020. Which there's lots of grounds to maybe ask some questions back at what happened in 2020, if we're going to be completely honest. Not saying he would have won either way. I'm just saying there was reasons to be concerned. The stop the steal, there was nothing that was going on that would cause that, but then they were trying to push it. Now, Democrats, to their credit, the leaders decided not to, get involved with that, which was smart, because it would look like a lot like, pot or kettle situation. The hypocrisy would be ridiculous. They stayed out of it, which was smart, to their credit. But there was definitely a movement. I don't see the Jay guy being mad about that election denying. And I want to go on a record too. People were like, well, it's because you're a Republican. I'm not, though. I'm a Democrat. I was a Democrat. I always leaned left, but I'm an independent. I'm in the middle. I, normally just try to take the rational side of an argument. And I think that there is plenty to argue on both sides, but I think one side is far worse than the other, but that's a whole other discussion. That's why I'm independent now and not on the left. So they're arguing those things. They are just like so ass mad that, she might get another chance. They're just pulling anything out. Oh, and then they go to the other one, the Holocaust comments. The Holocaust compared to Republicans, that was the final straw. What she said was not what they're saying she said. She quoted something that was almost, verbatim from the museum. It was later quoted, something similar was quoted by Susan Sarandon. And then the National Geographic Channel, when doing a documentary on, the situation with the Holocaust, said something almost identical to that. And that was when Disney owned them. A couple years later, they did a whole show on it. We're making similar comments in their documentary, and the company's owned by Disney. But what did she say? Okay, so we're going to go see what she said. What did she actually say about the Holocaust? Here's what she said. Jews were beaten in the streets, not by Nazi soldiers, but by their neighbors, even by children. Because history is edited, most people today don't realize that to get to a point where Nazi soldiers could easily round up thousands of Jews, the government first made their own neighbors hate them simply for being Jews. How is that any different from hating someone for their political views? Now, she never assigns politics. She never says, oh, because Republicans are being mistreated or Democrats are being mistreated. She's just saying what everybody else has already been saying, which is people are so polarized against each other that all they see is that difference of opinion politically, and they are going to great lengths to cancel people or to do different crazy things just because they don't agree with them. And is it that hard to believe that history could repeat itself with people being as polarized against each other now as it was then? Never assigning Democrat or Republican to it. Even though I'm going to argue as somebody who was a Democrat and on the left that I definitely see it further on that side than on the other. But I can tell you I see it on both sides where people hate others just simply because they don't vote the same way. Ironically, after this happened, and after she said this, and after she was canceled for it, the far left proved this to be true because they've gone outright and been anti-Semitic to people because of the Israeli-Palestinian war, and because of it, there's documented cases, many documented cases of lefties going out there and being anti-Semitic towards Jewish people, which literally just proved her damn point. All right, it was after the fact, but they proved her point. So no, Jay. Again, if you want to know who Jay is, I'm not going to bring him up in the video, but if you go to Star Wars Holocron, you can see Jay. But again, don't harass Jay. I don't condone harassing him. I already called his ass out on the thread anyway, with the same points I'm making in this video. But to all the other Jays out there, just stop with this narrative. It's not true. It's been proven false. And as far as the situation with Disney goes, that's the other I gotcha moment, because Disney didn't lose. They settled. No, see, Disney does this. But I know this because I've been doing Disney stuff for years, and I used to work in and around Disney. So it might not be something you know about, Jay. But Disney has a pattern where if they can settle with somebody to keep things under wraps, they will do so. And they usually do this with accidents and stuff. But in the case of Gina Carano, they did what they usually do on big cases, which they can't get out of hiding. They tried to get it dismissed repeatedly for nebulous, stupid reasons, which the court said, no, that's dumb. You can't argue that. And then when it came down to the place where they couldn't dismiss it anymore and it was going to move forward to discovery, which means they're going to go through the messages at Lucasfilm. They're going to go through what happened. They're going to go through all documentation to see where this was coming from, who decided she should get fired and why. All those things were going to come out publicly. They'd be in the court case, which would be eventually made, publicly seen. Disney didn't want that, so they settled. But Disney also has a tendency, when they settle, to admit no fault. And that's usually part of the settlement, was we both agree that nobody's at fault here. Disney's not at fault here. We're not guilty, even though you might be guilty as hell. We're not guilty, and you have to agree to that to make the settlement. Okay? That doesn't mean shit, Jay. It doesn't mean shit. And by Jay, I mean J period. It's just an initial. It doesn't mean anything. Your argument is weak. Your evidence is bullshit. And I'm tired of hearing it. You're also 6 years too late to this argument, or 5 years too late, or whatever it is, to this argument. People, they don't even care anymore. If they can bring Gina Carano back tomorrow, I don't think anybody's going to bat an eye except for people like you. And I don't think you're that many of you. So stop with your bullshit. Take a pill. Take a Midol. Go put some pronouns in your bio, or you're just a hypocritical transphobe. And shut the fuck up. Because everybody's tired of it. If they're going to put her back in Star Wars, that would be a smart move. A very smart move. So stop spreading lies and narratives and try to just make an attempt to look at evidence and think for yourself. I know it might be hard for you, but I believe you can do it if you really, really try. Anyway, please like and subscribe, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.